This will be the last run of the Kohler K241 for a couple months or maybe even a couple years, I don't know. I'll be keeping this motor as a backup. It's just going to sit in the corner of the garage. So, and unless I can find another 200 series, I don't think I'll be using this thing that much. So I have to swap all the parts over from it anyway, so it's not just going to be plug and play. Starts easy and runs good, but she burns a little bit of oil and it hasn't been used that much, so it's going to be a little hard to see the smoke. But she does have a significant amount of blow-by because the piston rings are pretty much shot. Head gasket's bad, so it leaks oil out the head, so it actually lacks power. And I mean, it would be simple to rebuild it, but I don't have the time to do a full rebuild, so I figured it would probably just be cheaper to buy something with a little more horsepower, and I got a deal on that K301 over there, so it has 2 more horsepower, and that one was just rebuilt too. So yeah, so the mission is to put this into this tractor. So this is the last run of it. Gonna make it good. Look at that blow by. That's not oil burning, making that smoke. It's the fuel, but still. Yeah, this swap should be interesting. So let's back her in to the workbench area where we're going to do the swap. Take the box out of the way. That's the keyway doing that on. That's the crankshaft key doing that. Yeah, she's parked a little oblong, but my radio turned on. That was weird. Alright, that's the last time that thing will be run for a while. As sad as it sounds, but I'll be keeping it in the corner over there just as a backup if I really need to. If I need the money, I'll sell it, but yep, so now let's take this thing apart and we'll swap the motor. Alright, so I made a little bit of progress. I've just been undoing most of this stupid little stuff. I started by taking off the hood and the side panels, which obviously, you know, you have to do. And the brush guard stays on there, which is pretty nice. It doesn't really get in the way either. I disconnected the throttle cables. You just have to undo. There's a clamp here and a clamp on the other side down here for the governor linkage, so that's good to go. Just need to keep this out of the way. I took the mower deck off because I have to get under it, and I removed the dry belt. Here's a look at the new belt. The crankshaft pulley is slid out a little bit. That's why it was making all that noise. It's not set in there properly, I guess. I'm going to swap all that over though and get it straightened out. I pulled the mule drive off and just put the bolt back in there for safekeeping. And I've undone all the wiring. This is the wiring for the headlights, and that red wire is one that I added in there for the tail lights. I just spliced them into the same wire, and that one runs back to the tail lights because this never had tail lights in the first place. I still have to just undo a bunch of stupid stuff like the starter cable and the wiring harness over there for the regulator. But and then under the tractor, I'm gonna undo the 4 mounting bolts. Kind of hard to see. It's a little dirty, but I replaced the 4 bolts. All I have to do is just remove those 4 bolts, and she should be good to lift out, and then we can swap the other motor right back in. Right over there. So I'm going to get started on these bolts now, and I'll undo the starter connections and all that stuff too. I unhooked the ground from the battery, so there's no way for it to start now. Well, safely. So here we go.
To any M&T Bank branch or mtb.com/easychoice today. M&T Bank. One transaction required for service.
Okay, made some progress after about an hour and a half, as you can see. It was about as much work as I had expected. I kind of expected it would be a little tough, and since that little motor is such a, so heavy because it's cast iron, I said, yeah, it's going to be pretty heavy. I don't have deep sockets, for ratchet on hand, so I had to be a little creative with getting the bolts out because it uses 4 9/16 bolts with a nut and a lock washer, and trying to reach up in there, I had to use a couple extensions to reach up in there because it's hard to obviously fit the socket in there. Eventually I got him out though, and I had to disconnect everything else, like the starter cable. That was one thing that was holding it on, and the drive belt got caught on the pulley on the other side, so I removed that. I had to remove the mule drive, and I had the gas can right over here with the funnel in case the fuel line started leaking, but it didn't, so that's good. And then I just vacuumed all the dirt and crap out from the bay down here. They cut the frames to fit the K-series Kohlers specifically. So putting a different kind of motor in it is almost not practical, but you don't see many of these get repowered anyway. So yeah, it didn't come out too bad. Again, here's a look at the dry belt. Here's the connector like I showed you for the headlights. Now the damage, unfortunately, I have no clue what this is to. I have to look at it and see where I had it in. And I was not able to remove the starter wire until I yanked the motor, and I yanked it too hard before I had enough room to undo the wire, because lo and behold, that terminal on the solenoid snapped off because it's cheap plastic, so that kind of pissed me off. But that solenoid was old anyway. I would kind of have to get a new one anyway, so I guess I'll just have to get a new solenoid. But yeah, I was really annoyed about that. But here's the cable here. You can see it just ripped right out of there. But here's the K241. She's not too bad. Just has typical grease and grime and crap. I think I'll just take the parts off of it, and then I'll clean them up before I throw them on the K301. But you can see the flywheel shroud is in much better shape. It's got except for the serial number, it's got the decals on it still. I'd have to just swap the parts over. I mean, you can see how the shroud got busted in on this one. So it's going to have it's a K301 with a K241 shroud. You can see this got busted in. It's under this top piece, and it actually shouldn't be, as you can see here. So when I swap the shroud over, I have to swap the governor linkage too. I guess the spring could stay. That's all real clean. It was repainted and it looks real nice. So I have to swap the starter, the coil, the voltage regulator, the condenser. It's already got the breaker points on it. There's the cover right there. So all this stuff is just tied right in. I'll take pictures and stuff so I know how to mount it back up, but it's pretty self-explanatory. This little bracket right here, this is where the ground wire for the battery hooks in. I have to remove that, and then this is what you use to lift the motor out or put it back in if you have a hoist. I'll swap the dipstick over because the old dipstick broke. You can see there, and then this is where the little hanging bracket goes. Swap the air cleaner assembly and the carburetor. Which hopefully I won't have to do much adjusting to the carburetor, but I'll just give that a quick clean. Fuel pump, which I think the fuel pump might be on its way out, because after it idles for like 15 minutes or so, it starts to slow down and almost die out. If you don't do anything, it will die out. I've had that problem with it before, so that might mean the fuel pump's going out. You can't see here. This plate here for the PTO, this is the bearing plate. I have to swap that over too, so you can mount the electric clutch to it. And I mean, I don't have a use for a clutch right now because I don't have one, and I'm not mowing with this. But I have to put one on there for future use. And then, of course, the muffler that my uncle did a great job welding. Just look at the block too. Like, you can see the head, you can see the leak there, but look at the block. Look at the cooling fins, how they're all rusty. And this one didn't seem to have much rust on it from before. It's all fresh paint and everything, and it's had very little use since it was rebuilt, but I know it runs, so I'll be darned if it doesn't start up like it should, but I guess we'll find out. So the next thing to do is to swap the shroud and everything over, and that I'm going to do that next. So this is where we're at for now. It's a bit of a mess. Okay, so I've been working on this thing since 11 o'clock this morning. I've been out here in the garage, and I've only taken 1 or 2 breaks, but I got some progress done. Not as much as I would have liked, but I ran into a couple roadblocks on the way, and that obviously affected what happened. So the main plan was to swap the flywheel cover over from the K241, because the one from the K301 got all bent up. So I did that. This is the K241, the old motor. I had this up here on top of my couple cinder blocks, and I started tearing it apart, and let's see if I can throw a couple extra pictures in there while I talk. It was dirty on the inside, obviously, because it hadn't been apart in so long, but the flywheel cover was in great shape, and it still has the K241 decals on it, which kind of suck, but I swapped it right over to this, and I had a couple problems with the bolts interchanging, but it's just a bunch of hex bolts, really. They look like they're rounded off, but they actually aren't, because they're not metric, I know that. I took all the bolts off. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bolts to take the shroud off, and it came off pretty simple, and it was actually one of the later things that I put on. I took the shroud off, and then I started taking off parts like the carburetor, which comes off here with these 2 bolts. This gasket was stuck, so I peeled it off. I'm gonna have to get a new gasket for that. I pulled off the fuel pump right there. That's going to need a gasket too. And I pulled off the breather for the valve cover, or the oil breather rather. And then I pulled off the square box, like the air box for the exhaust, which is right here. So everything came off fairly easily. I was going to swap over this top shroud piece to the K301 too, but I ended up not doing that, and I actually found a bit of a problem, because the spark plugs are in 2 different spots on each of these motors. The K241 has a spark plug here, and on the K301 the spark plug is up around here. So the hole right here actually was not in the right spot for the K301, because I guess it's a little later. It is a couple years later I found out. Actually, this is the focus. That's the serial number. The first 2 digits tell the year, so the 16 means it was made in 1986. So it came off of a very late 212. Because at that time, John Deere didn't make any other tractor with the 12-horse Kohler. So it's an 86, so it's 4 years newer than this, because this was made in 82. Most of the parts on that 210 were made in 82, because it's an 83 model, but it's very early, so a lot of the parts were made in 82 and then crossed over. And I got all the governor linkage up there, swap this over. I just have to put the carburetor on. Like I said, I have to get a new gasket for this here, so I'm going to order one. Everything just comes off, all the shrouding comes off in just a couple pieces. You got the front piece, top, and then side. That's really all there is to it. And then there, on the 241, there was a wire down there for the breaker points, which are covered up right there, and the wire would run down through here and up into the points. And this did not have the wire for the points, so I took the cover off and I tried swapping the wire over, but it didn't quite reach. It hooks into this post here on the coil, and it goes in this little narrow gap right here, and then goes to the points, which I'm sure will have to be adjusted. I just stuck a little connector on there to remind myself that I need a new wire. I think that was 12 gauge wire too. Most of the other wiring on these things are 16 gauge, but you can see it's much thicker, so I'll just have to make a new wire up and hook it in there. And as you just saw, I put the coil on it, which wasn't too bad. I found out that I mixed up the bolts. I was using the wrong bolt. There's a bracket that goes behind here, and then there's this clip, and then there's the bolt with the washer, and the condenser mounts right above it, so that wasn't too bad. This is the plug for the voltage regulator I have to clean up. I just swapped the voltage regulator. I kept the voltage regulator on the shroud when I swapped the shroud over. The starter was simple too, a lot simpler than I thought. There's just 2 9/16 bolts here, and that's it. Now, I'm trying to blow some of the crap off of it. You just have to make sure the starter gear jumps out and lines up properly when we finally go to start it. Then this one also has a tiny little drain valve down there, like you see on most small motors. Not the huge petcock that these. I don't think you can see that. That's why I have to sit it up on such a high cinder block like that. That's the only thing that I have to keep it up that high, because that's where the petcock sits. So it's anywhere else, any lower than that, it's in the way. But for now, for I don't know, a couple months, maybe even a couple years, the thing's going to sit right here in the corner, unfortunately. But I don't know. I'll have to make plans for it. The motor was real clean. I just took a little bit of degreasering and degreased some of the spots that were a little messy, like down in here, like in the nooks and crannies where they hadn't really cleaned too much. But everything else was pretty clean, and most of that is fresh paint too. So here's the carburetor. I'm not going to clean the carburetor at all. I mean, I used a little carb cleaner to just clean the gum and stuff off of the outside. And same with the fuel pump too. You just have to make sure you don't get the carb cleaner inside the fuel pump, because that's not good. Eats the gaskets up. But so that's, yeah, the fuel pump isn't that bad. So it leaked a ton of fuel out, but as expected. So I just have to get new gaskets for this stuff, and then be able to throw it back on and put the air cleaner back on. Then we have the muffler box, like I showed you before. That just mounts up under this bracket right here. That's for lifting it up, you know, hooking a chain up to here and lifting it. And then there's these two ground bolts here. And this is the bearing plate where the electric PTO clutch mounts. I don't know if the manual ones had a plate like this, but this mounts to that side of the block, and with these three bolts that you see here, and mounts right up. So I still have to get the pulley off of the keyway. The dry pulleys you can see down there, I had a little trouble with it, so I'm just going to have to fiddle with that a little bit more, because without that there's no way to run the dry belt. So I'll get that out of there. I just didn't feel like fiddling with it today. Here's one look at the tractor again. Wiring and everything. I still have to figure out what that wire is there that broke, and I'm going to find a good used solenoid. I actually have an extra 4-post solenoid sitting around, but most of the time these don't fit, because these are just generic, but I'd have to see if this solenoid fits. I had this on the Yard King, and it didn't work, because I found out that used a three post. Actually, I have a spare condenser right here. I actually forgot about this. This is off of a 318 with the B43 Onan, so I actually don't think this will work, but just in case. So the next thing I have to do is finish wiring up the breaker points. I need to get some 12 gauge wire and just run it from here underneath to the points and get the points adjusted. I need to get a gasket for the carburetor, and I guess for the fuel pump if it needs one. And then I can mount them up and put this back in the tractor, and of course put the bearing plate on and the muffler, but that comes last. So yep, that's it for now.